Hello and welcome to Cracked Open, a podcast guiding you on your journey to becoming a vessel of unconditional love. And this is your host, Beck Milonis, High Priestess, Channel, and Activator. Join me on this series as I share reflections, insights, and channel transmissions from my journey of walking the initiation path. Each episode is a unique transmission containing supportive frequencies to facilitate the deepest healing, activation, and reconnection with your soul. I invite you to open your mind and set the intention to receive this episode into your heart space. Let's go. Welcome back, beautiful souls, to another episode of Cracked Open, a podcast about becoming a vessel of unconditional love. It is my honor to bring God, the energies today. Bring on this guest that I have with me today. I have Ash Parkhouse with me. He is a beautiful, divine masculine men's work coach and somatic bodyworker. I have had the pleasure of working personally with Ash when I was in Bali. So we met in Bali when he was working out of Nirvana Strength, and wow, like so painful but so epic. Like the sessions that we were having were huge releases for me. So this is a man who really walks his talk. He brings such power and devotion to his work. He's a dad now, which is like fucking perfect because he's just, I can't even imagine how amazing of a dad he would be. So to introduce him formally, Ash is a somatic body worker and men's coach that blends inner work and physical empowerment to lead men back to who they truly are, beyond layers of conditioning and masks. So this is going to be a really great transmission for my male audience, because I think Ash is just such a beautiful example of just all the things that I talk about. So Ash, welcome to the show. And if you would like, I would love for you to just introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us all about how you got to be this beautiful divine masculine, doing the work that you do, anything that you feel would serve my audience about your journey. The mic is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. What a beautiful introduction. I'm very honored to be here. Well, where to start? I think the best place for me to start is how a version of me, maybe even just, oh God, maybe even only 5 years ago, but definitely 10 years ago or further back than that, would have never even begun to consider who I could become. And I'm sure a lot of people really resonate with that in so many, many ways. But my background is as a very atheist, belief system person, somebody who battled intensely with suicidal thoughts and tendencies for the majority of his life, somebody that never wanted to have children, had a huge, I would say, fear of men. And to then sort of come full circle, I now personally mentor men, take them through rites of passage and initiation. I have a son, I'm married. Like, you know, I completely obliterated the concept of suicide from my existence. And I had a pretty savage unatheisting. So yeah, it's been
unatheisting. You have to just, what does that mean? Is it
unatheisting?
I love it. I don't know what it means, but I can imagine what it means. But what is that savage? How was it savage? It all just hit you in the face and it was like, I'm seeing God, and now it's like, oh fuck, here we are.
Yeah. Oh,
don't die.
Choked on my water among that. Oh. Yeah, hit the nail on the head. So like I said, I remember the vast majority of my life coming from a very lost, confused, wounded, suicidal place. There was always something in me missing that I couldn't find what it was, and the thing that occupied that space instead was this suicidal thing, this urge, desire, romanticization, this craving of death. What I didn't know is that was an ego death that the deepest desire was for. I had no idea that that was the case until I aggressively went through a series of them. But yeah, so I had a huge part of my life up until the point where I was 30 years old already. And I was leaning into sort of some agnosticisms, in the sense that there were things outside of my control, outside of my power, things I'd witnessed or experienced that didn't align with my rational belief systems. But I still held on deeply to the label of atheist. And then I had a summer in Bali that my partner and myself we brought a third person into our relationship. It inevitably ended with a bit of heartbreak. I went away to go and deal with that heartbreak. And seemingly out of nowhere, me and my partner decided that after we'd processed some of this grief, that a good idea would be to integrate okay, I'm using language that I would use now. Right then we thought, let's do some mushrooms and like just have an experience of doing some mushrooms together. So we had a mushroom journey. It was immediate confrontation of ego and shadow. It was profound. It was beautiful. It was intense. And it showed us that there was something much deeper in the layers of us that needed to really be unearthed. And that just sort of sent us on a snowball. We spent the next 6 months doing incredibly deep introspective work, shadow work, inner child healing, journeying, deep integration work, and all of this pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling at layers of ourselves, until eventually things started to get a little bit weird, a little bit edgy, right? Both as non-religious people, we started to have some experiences where certain energies or deities were revealing themselves to us. And even along this scale, the first one that happened was, I didn't want children. My partner didn't want children. We'd had the agreement that we weren't going to. 6 months into doing all of this work, about 6 or 8 hours after a medicine journey that had no real impact on me, I suddenly start like going full into this other reality. And I start seeing this vision of like 5 years in my future. And it's me and it's Mariana, and we have a business and some business partners. And then I see us and we have 3 children. And I feel immense love for these children. And in that moment, I'm freaking out. I grab my wife's hand, my girlfriend at the time, but I grab her hand. As I grab her hand, she sees everything I'm seeing. And we have this like, what the like experience. That sets a few things in motion, and then things start creeping in. Another couple months down the line, we've kind of integrated that piece, but I find myself just adding layers to the things I believe in, right? I was like, okay, so before this, I didn't believe in anything. And then I was like, okay, I'm open to some concepts. There's definitely other things, maybe spirit, maybe this. I'm still prefer the term universe to God. And I'm experiencing all these things. And then Mother Mary energy comes in, and like, I immediately heal some inner child stuff. And then Magdalene comes through really aggressively, with my wife in particular, like fierce Magdalene energy there.
Beautiful.
And then we're having all these experiences, and I'm adding things to the list of things I believe in, right? I still don't believe in God, but okay, fine. Mother Mary, I'll accept that. That's fine. That experience happened. I believe in that. Like beings from another planet that can show me my future or whatever. Okay, yeah, fine. I'll let that in. And then we had a friend come into our life who challenged what we were experiencing. And on paper, what she said was so simple and so innocent. And she just asked, we were having dinner together, and she said, do you believe that everything you're experiencing is true, is like really happening? Or do you think some of it's like your mind making stuff up? In that moment, like my wife immediately answered, there's no way I could make this up. Absolutely all of it. And I lent in with the, well, there's a part of me that still thinks that. Needless to say, I think the weekend after that was a full moon. We did a journey, and this went textbook. All my biggest outrageous journeys always go the same way. I take a medicine, it decides, no, not tonight. And it doesn't work for me.
That happens to me all the fucking time. Yeah.
And you're like, come on. I thought I was going to go in and do some, connect with Ashley, go in and do some inner child work, like have a look, peek behind the curtain at some shadows. The medicine's like, no, okay, nothing for you right now. I'm like, oh, okay. A few hours pass, enough for me to realize, to acknowledge that I'm no longer under the influence of the medicine. And we'd been having some night terrors at the time. And somebody in passing that my wife had spoken to said, you should call on Archangel Michael, like, because he helps like clear bad spirits, help things pass. And at the time, again, we'd experienced a few things to be like, let's try it. And in that moment, my wife was like, we're about to go to bed, but do you remember, like, we didn't do the Archangel Michael thing. What have we got to do? Just say his name 3 times? Okay. So there we are in the living room. She says Archangel Michael. She says Archangel Michael. She says it a 3rd time. And it, to me, somebody has just shone like the bluest light ever into my eyes. And then I'm immediately collapsed in a pile, sobbing because he's present in my garden, like occupying the entire space of it. And not in the like nice angelic, here's a person with some wings form, like in the Be Not Afraid, absolutely abstract. He's made of feathers and nature and armor, and there's an eye on everything, and the eyes have teeth, and it's okay, cool. So now I'm really out of my depths of what I'm experiencing. And in that moment, my brain went, fine, we can add archangels to the list of things we believe in, but still no God. And that was a deciding moment for me, because that was, I would say that was a moment that I kind of challenged the concept of God. And then in that moment was when I experienced what I would describe as my death. So full ego death, that's it. Nothing exists. And in that moment of death, being able to tap into that experience of unconditional, infinite source love, and just be like, everything is love, was mind-blowing, soul-blowing, whatever. It was enough to shake me. The irony of that situation was that shattered me. It absolutely fractured me. Having so much like ego destruction in like a single moment absolutely tore me apart. And it actually was both the closest me and my partner have ever been to breaking up, and the closest I've ever been to suicide, because I brought in this whole new philosophy of, if that's what's next, what am I doing here?
Oh my God, yes, exactly. Yep.
And man, like that was the most intense 48 hours of my life. Like, I think this was me and my partner, literally, we spent like the next 48 hours just in bed, like holding each other, making love, healing, going through it, grieving, crying, like this like death of a part of me, this death of a part of our relationship that we'd encountered, this in being the closest I've ever been to wanting to genuinely just end everything. And the outcome of that ended up becoming, I must have experienced that for a reason. I must have seen this like a life with children for a reason. And the conclusion I came to it was that then surely my life's purpose is to cultivate as much love now as what I could experience next.
That's so beautiful.
And it was just, and that was it, like that switch. And in that moment of that decision, the concept of suicide was absolutely eliminated for me. Absolutely eliminated. And
we hear this. Yeah, we hear this a lot. Like, I see this a lot. People who are in this vortex, in this energy, like on this path and this mission. And I see this in myself, that a lot of us have this suicidal ideation because it's a part of our soul that literally knows what that infinite love and the grace and everything is when you're melded into everything. And so it's like, comparatively, being a human feels very constrictive and hard and heavy. And so we're like that's the longing. It's like to go back home, to leave, and we associate it with death,
Yeah.
but it's actually to leave our body, right? And then that challenge of like when you do feel and you connect it back to it, that was me for 2 years. Like once I felt the infinite bliss and love of God, I was like, why the fuck am I here, right? But you're right in saying that last piece is so important. When you can anchor and ground, that's what we're here to do. All of that love here in our human form, right? That's the spicy meatball. That's the part that we're here for, right? And you can experience that as a waking state. And I'm saying to you guys, because I was all the things that Ash was as well, you definitely can experience that as a waking state. And I am experiencing walking around feeling fucking orgasmic 90% of the time, like so connected to everything. So it's a potential. I wanted to ask in that, a lot of these things are really challenging for our human mind. Were there any points where you were like, I'm losing my fucking mind, I'm going crazy, I need
Oh,
help, I need
gotcha.
support? Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Like I think every time I felt ready to deal with what I was dealing with, that next step would almost derail me into that.
Mm-hmm.
Like dealing with my shadows, meeting parts of my own consciousness and having full on dialects with them, meeting parts of my inner child and feeling myself regress to 5 years old and like parenting me. That was one thing that was fine. But like seeing like some sort of energy being or something and then interacting with that would send me on a spiral of like, am I losing my fucking mind? Is this shit happening? And like some of the things that I do in response to that would be like out of my mind, because sometimes you go searching for that experience again instead of processing and integration. And then I think the same thing probably happened certainly up to that point 3 or 4 times where I would have the next sort of level of profound experience, and it would maybe even derail me for a bit and make me have to sit down and question, like, what am I doing and what am I experiencing? And like, am I going crazy? Am I losing my mind? Is this really happening? But I think because of that, it really stressed the importance of grounding and integration. Like you said, it's like, I very much believe that the place I teach from is experientially going into the extremes and then grounding them and centering them and then being able to teach from that place. I definitely don't suggest other people go off and fucking derail their psyche and destroy their ego and like attempt to, it's like, that's probably not the best way, but I go into these experiential extremes to bring it back to center and then teach from that place.
And you know what, Ash, that's the dark masculine in you, which I think I always saw that in you and I loved you for it. And I was like, one day he's gonna, because when we were working together, you were so open to me having my wild experiences, but you were just kind of dipping your toe into this stuff. And I could see it. I could see this fucking blue hole version of you in the future. And I was like, it's coming. And it's that dark masculine, like my dark feminine, or, Marianne, I'm sure her dark feminine is really strong too. That's the obliteration. That's like go into the deepest, darkest depth and fucking rebirth from that place. Not everyone has that desire. Not everyone does this journey that way. And I think it's not to typecast or stereotype or like say, if you don't do it this way, then you can't be a healer. But I think it's those of us who really signed up to serve others. We need to take ourselves to those extremes to be able to hold as much as we do, right? So it's, if you're going through those extremes, guys, it's probably because you're here to help people through it, even if you don't know, is my message. So the question I wanted to ask, to bring it kind of back down, the grounding, the anchoring, do you think that, I think you had a very high level of self-understanding and knowledge and wisdom from the path that you're already on with the bodywork stuff and the physical health stuff. So that really grounded you to have something tangible and physical. So tell me how you transitioned from that and like what the calling was. I know you were doing a lot of nutrition and sorry, that was Mariana. You were doing a lot of body physical health stuff. So how did you A, get into that, and then B, move on to bringing that into the more esoteric, like the body work with the I'm noticing that, like, because I'll explain kind of what happens in a bodywork session or what was happening with Ash, because I was seeing this when it was happening. He would touch on like a certain part of my body and I would get a flash of like a past life memory or some trauma stored. And I would have the story of like what specifically it was. And as that stuff was moving, he's just, doing body work, which was painful. And I don't think he was having these things that were happening, but because I could see this stuff, I was like, fuck me. Like we literally store this shit in the body. Like it's crazy. So yeah, riff on that for a hot second.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, honestly, I think that the reason I was so capable of integrating was because I had such a grounded background in the physical and material, because I entered into body work and physical training from a super nerdy, like anatomy and physiology, biomechanics obsessed perspective, and I just wanted to know how humans worked. I looked at it like a puzzle. I wanted to know, like, what muscles, tendons, ligaments, bones, joints do what and why. And I just got super obsessed. And it's like my road was going through traditional sport massage therapy and strength conditioning, and then studying under chiropractors, osteopaths, physiotherapists, dry needling, whatever, taking all of these different specializations, piecing them together into what I thought had the most value, and then challenging, like, what works across all of these, what doesn't, and just, I think, staying very open-minded throughout. And then I think it was that a lot of these types of things were happening way before I was really open to them, that I just could not deny, you know. Even years before I came out into Bali, I knew myself as a physical body worker, right? So I knew I was working on the body. I know I was releasing tension and stress and things like that. But I couldn't deny that I would see the same patterns of physical restriction repeating in people with similar histories of traumas, similar patterns of emotional holding. And I just had to start to explore this stuff. And yeah, I think that's where it started to go. Is like, the first bridge was, one, I was seeing these patterns of emotions repeating in people. You know, I had two, like, housewives who every time they had an argument with their daughter would come in with pain in the same place. And I was like, that's weird, but it's cool. So I started to dive down a little bit more, and like my acceptance of the divine or anything else, I just added it to the list of things I'm okay with believing in. Right? Oh, okay. So also we can store specific emotion or tension or trauma in the body. I'm okay with that. And I would work with that. And then eventually that just continued to evolve. We'd start to see more, like, really big patterns of, little t trauma, big T trauma, generational trauma, or spiritual trauma, collective trauma. And you just see these things start to manifest more and more, and realize when you're going into the body, you give from a nervous system perspective, you give the nervous system safety. So in giving the nervous system safety and regulation, it allows it to go in and clear patterns and incomplete patterns of trauma and stress responses. So from a biological, physiological level, that's what it does. Like, when we're doing good body work held in a safe container, as you create more safety and space in the body, it can clear stuff, because we do store trauma, we do store emotion, or anything that feels incomplete, that gets held. And we've got to hold it somewhere. So as we free it up in the body, those patterns tend to free, especially if we have a safe container. And then it just kind of kept evolving. And then I realized that, can I bring these same things into training? If I train someone in a certain way and make them lean into certain discomforts or open certain areas of their body, can we get an emotional response from that? And I realized, yeah, we can. And then I think the lines just started to blur between emotional, like, between what I was doing being physical, to being emotional, to being about the kind of the identity and stories of a person. And then when I started to go through my personal journeys of shadow work, inner child healing, and all of this, it just felt like there's no way I can keep this to myself when I'm somebody that is actively healing people. Like, I gotta up my game on that as well. And it just became this continual pursuit of being able to bridge my experiences and, like, my learned skills, and like, make that gap smaller and smaller, so that I can just in real time be imparting what I'm learning. And somewhere along the lines, that got me into the type of body work that I do now, which is much more, it's that blend of that spiritual, emotional, and physical in the body. And then with the men's work, that was a slightly different path. The men's work was a slightly different one. I'll go into it really quick. Is along this journey, my partner realized that she had a certain pattern of repeated burnouts. I decided to step up and say, I'll be sole provider. You focus on healing. And witnessing her in her healing journey, doing more embodiment work and more feminine work, made me go, holy shit, if I don't step even harder into my masculine, she's going to be way out there and I will not be a pair. So I dove headfirst into like masculinity work and embodiment work for the divine masculine, the dark masculine, especially because that's where I'm happy, but also the light masculine.
Oh, we know you are.
and then when I was doing that work, it was just another version of the, I need to be fucking doing this. Mm-hmm. And I got it as a transmission. Like I went through a men's initiation experience, like a transition from like boyhood to manhood. And in that experience, I received that as like a really aggressive transmission of like, stop fucking around, stop playing small, show up, do this work. We need you to do this work. We need more men to do this work. What are you playing at? And like, I got that transmission. I came home from that experience. I opened my first men's container. It was just like, okay, it's like, it's not my work. It's the work. I surrender to that. Like, I'm in.
Okay. I think this is where we're going to go with this. Do you know Ross? You know, Ross.
I do.
Yeah. First guy I ever had on this like podcast. And he said the same thing, that transition to manhood, like exactly that initiation. So talk to me about that. And yeah, no, you were speaking and I was like, I bet he's friends with Ross. Yeah. Fucking, I love you, Ross.
I love Ross. I trained Ross. Like he did some work with me. It was like, we did some PT. It was great. I was like a mini me of him because I'm 5'4".
He's a giant. So talk to me about, let me just feel for a second. Something actually I felt to ask you, just for some specific examples. We are definitely going to launch into this masculine awakening because it's so fucking important and we need more of you out here. So we're going to get into some practical, tangible stuff to implement. A question I was having is, are there a few examples of like parts of the body? I really want to empower my audience to like, I have a hip issue, a knee issue, like a shoulder issue. Like if there are certain ones that are just coming, whatever intuitively you feel to speak on, and what they might mean or what might help them to release. I think that'd be really helpful for the audience.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I can really impart on people is if you haven't had like impact or injury specific to a part of your body, then it always starts at the center. It always starts at the pelvis. For women, especially, like movement and fluidity in the pelvis is so outrageously important. Like if you only did one thing and it was like move your hips, like that would get you through a lot of stuff.
I'm gonna interrupt for a second because it's like, seriously, fuck me. Like since in the past 6 months, all I have been wanting to do is like shake and twerk and move my hips. And honestly, it's like nonstop, constantly, all the time. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my life force. Like this is what I've always been meaning to do, but because I've been so repressed and like, so I second that, women. I second that. You got to get in the gym and twerk and shake your butt, and you don't have to do anything, but or do it in the privacy of your own home. I've been doing that. I've been going into my gym here in Mexico and just full on floor dancing, like grinding it, and it feels so good. And I'm like, freedom. So yes, thank you. I second that for the women.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and also to the men, like men need to move their hips more as well. Like a man doesn't want to be rigid in the hips. Like if you've only got like forward back, we're not working much there.
Yeah. True.
But yeah, so like everything starts from that center point, from the pelvis. Even like in the anatomy world, we call it the proximal bone. Like everything in the body is referenced to how close or far away from that it is. And it is that important when we get into it emotionally and energetically as well. So I think I've heard the psoas, the deep hip flexor muscles, be referred to as the emotional muscle before. And it's so goddamn true. Like it's on your spine. It shares like tissue with your diaphragm, so it's involved in your breathing. It goes through your pelvis, which means it's in all of your pelvic floor. So sexual shame, guilt, trauma, all of that's there too. And it goes all the way onto the leg. it's outrageous. So that centerpiece of the body is where it will all start. If you only focused on one area, you focus on that. The further away from that you get, the longer you've been looping a compensation pattern that is got exhausted, reached out, got exhausted, reached out, got exhausted, reached out. The amount of times that I see resolution in people's problems in shoulders, elbows, knees, wrists, hips, neck, whatever, by going into the pelvis, working deep in there with the pelvic floor, with the deep hip flexor muscles and up under the ribs, like it releases an outrageous amount.
That's what we were doing for me. And that's what I've been doing in my own bodywork sessions with myself lately. I'm actually like literally my hand is on my hip, like working on it right now because I've been doing bodywork on myself. And that's where I've been called to go. So I love that. And it's so fucking true when I work on my pelvis and even that spot that you used to touch that I fucking hated, the under the rib, that sucks. It's true. Like it's very accurate and true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So start in the pelvis, and like for people to release themselves from that place, what would you suggest? Like massage, like touch, like how can they start to do that?
I like massage and touch. I think if you're quite an aware person, I love doing it intuitively, just like going in and seeing what you can meet. For me, I like the body to meet me back. So I'm going to start to apply pressure into a piece of like into my hip, into a part of me. I'm going to apply pressure until my body presses back. And then I know like we've met. Okay, so I can stay here until something changes. Maybe I want to do movement or friction. Maybe I just want to take really big breaths while I'm there. But you just stay with it until it changes, because what you're trying to do is impart the information that we're safe if you let go. Like that's ultimately what we're trying to do. You're safe if you let go. So I'll meet you here. And sometimes, pain is going to meet you back. Tension, pressure, like noise, head noise, whatever, movement. And it's like, I'm just gonna stay here. I'm just gonna ride this out until you go, and then, oh, awesome. Okay, we got somewhere.
Yeah. And I remember that moment in every single bodywork session ever of the like pushing, the oh my God, I can't. And then when you let go, you think it's going to be painful, but actually it's fucking orgasmic, guys. So there we go. It's a thing as well. Like when you just let go. And it's interesting too. I'm feeling into like the hips, what I've heard about the metaphysical. I think it's what's her name? She did the Louise Hay. I think it's Louise Hay. She has all the different places in the different body and what they mean. Hips is like literally not being able to let go of something, like holding on, not surrendering, like trying to take the control. So it makes sense that so many of us carry that. And then it also makes so much sense that when a woman particularly is embodied in a lot of her feminine, her hips naturally want to move and flow and like be open and receive. So I love that. Beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted and so much more. Okay, moving into men's work. Down it's completely changing the trajectory because we got some time. How did that initiation happen for you into the call? Like, and what did that initiation look like for you? That pivotal point.
So, I mean, I did what I think a lot of people need to do, which is I found a mentor. You know, shout out to Embodied Masculine, like my mentor Amir. So when I encountered Mariana's expression of the feminine, and I went, oh fuck, that's challenging to me if I don't like also rise with this. I started looking for ways that I could get in touch with my masculine and embody it further. The first thing I found was a book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. I read it cover to cover. Everybody says it's a really hard read. It landed with me for some reason. Then I was like, does anyone teach this in a practical sense? And I think I literally just Googled the words like embodied masculine, and that's the name of his company. So I went in. He offers something called the MIIR, the Men's Intensive Initiation Retreat. And I was like, don't know what that is. Haven't done any men's work yet. Like totally in it. I was like, yeah, I'm in. Like contacted. Yeah, I want in on this program. We had a call. He was like, you might want to check out what I'm about. Like at least come to us. Have you ever done a men's circle? I'm like, no. So you should at least come to a men's circle. I was like, I'm in. Like I knew nothing about it. And I met like in my first encounter with him, I just knew, I was like, this is a man that needs to lead me. There's something I'm going to gain from this. I poured my heart and soul out to him and joined the program. and then went through this whole program. So trying to think what I can say. So a part of the initiation is this brotherhood connection. So one thing that I didn't have in the past, brotherhood. I was always a person that was like fiercely independent. I don't need anybody. And then I realized what an absolute fallacy that is. I think it's very important to be self-empowering and to not need anybody, but I also think you need to acknowledge that you also need people. It's like both sides of that. So for me, it was my first experience of brotherhood. And of course, that brought up all of my triggers, all of my wounds in the masculine of like labeling all men as something, having grown up far more comfortable in the feminine and with the feminine. So the first thing it did is took me on a road of brotherhood and a lot of online connection and deep personal work. But essentially it headed with a retreat. It was like a 4-day intimate retreat. And I'm kind of sworn to secrecy, so I can't give a lot of the details on what happened there, but it was very much a process of emptying by revisiting the things that didn't serve us and by being witnessed by the other men in the emptying of that, to be seen in your most vulnerable and your most powerful. And it all, headed with a rite of passage, an initiation, a gathering of everybody in that. And in that entire process of going into wounds and fragility and vulnerability, but also into power and leaning on other men and being loved, receiving love from other men, which was like, what? Going through that process, it was just that. It was incredibly eye-opening to be able to tap into every expression of every emotion, not just the ones that are okay. Like, oh yeah, everybody's happy if you're expressing happiness. Some people can handle it when you express sadness. Can you pour out grief and be held by another man? What about rage? Can you go into the peak of a rage expression and have that held? Going through that experience was what really allowed me to build trust and security in the masculine and to step into mine. And that was that kind of process for me.
Beautiful. Let's talk about, I think you hold a really beautiful codex for like dominance in a very healthy way. Like it's a very healthy dominance that you exude. And it's fucking rare to, I take that back. It's not rare. There are beautiful men everywhere who exude that, but it's has been rare in our society to see men who exude dominance without it being wounded, right? Or toxic or controlling or any of those things. And I think it comes from this healthy dark masculine that you have. So talk to me about what that experience is for you and how someone can start to cultivate that if they're a masculine and that healthy ability to dominate. Because the reality, and I speak about this a lot, and this is for highly feminine women, right? Which most men, straight men, want a highly feminine woman. They tell me this all the time. And in order to have it, like you said with Mariana, like when they're holding that level of femininity, you need to be able to hold the container of masculinity, which is equal and or above. And truly, the majority of women are submissive in nature. We want to receive, we want to surrender, we want to be in that energy. These are feminine women I'm talking about. There are women who are more masculine, and that's cool, and that's their vibe. I'm a highly feminine woman, so I'm speaking for myself, and my audience vibe with me, so they would be mainly like this, right? So for the men listening to this, or if you have a male partner who you would like to support in becoming more naturally dominant, was that something that you were always, it sounded to me like it's not the case, because you said you were highly feminine and around a lot of women. So this dominance, was it something that was innate for you, or is it something that you uncovered, or how did that process happen for you?
A little bit of both. I think, to be honest, it largely came through when I met my now wife, because I think I'd operated a lot of my life from a fear perspective and with a lot of stories and without clear examples of what it necessarily meant to be masculine, seeing shadows in both sides of like this over-aggressor, like not nice person versus like this too much of a nice guy at the detriment to themselves, and going, I don't relate to either of these. Where the fuck do I navigate? So instead, I just like separated myself from men, and I always had a social group of women around me and these types of things. And then I think because of that, I was quite a passive, people pleasing, non-confrontational man.
Mm-hmm.
I was engaged to another woman prior to meeting my now wife. And when that breakup happened, I got to a point where I was like, why the fuck am I always changing me to fit somebody else instead of just upfront going, hey, this is me, like it or don't. I'm done trying to pretend to be someone I'm not to reel someone in. I don't like that game. Like, I've masked for so many other reasons in my life, my whole life. I'm not doing it for intimacy and for relations. So I really went off and worked on myself before I met Mariana. And then when we met, I think it was just that I was really upfront and clear where they went, hey, this is me. I'm putting me first currently. I love me the most. Like, that's where I'm at. This is who I am, what I'm about. If you're down for that, I would love to factor you in as well as like the next person on my priority list from me. She came in going exactly the same thing. We also both had preferences for non-monogamy, even though we'd been in monogamous relationships for other partners in the past. And we're both kinky, which helped. So I think it was maybe that was the first time that I ever really stepped into something really, one, with my truth, and two, with boundaries. Mm-hmm. And I think that was just such a statement piece for me. And because I really led that, it became easy to continue leading, because I stepped in and went, hey, this is me. You up for this? And she was like, oh, yeah. I was like, okay, well, I'll support you in that as well. And I led. And I think in taking the lead and in being like clear and authentic and full of integrity, that allowed us to step into that dynamic quite quickly. And then we riffed off that. And for me, like the embodiment of domination came through me initially through sexuality, right? Being very, very comfortable in the BDSM kink world and scene. That expression of me, I found it almost like a character. I found it very easy to jump into that. So in that, I set the space, I hold the space, there's a scene, there's crystal fucking clear communication, there is absolute safety, like, you know, and I view domination as a service, you know. Wow. I'm being of service. It's like I'm a service dom. It's like I'm serving you. If I'm offering you that dominant energy, I'm holding that space. I am providing the utmost safety that I possibly can for you to be able to fully embody surrender. Because if you don't feel safe, you don't get to go into that. So I'm in service to you. I'm giving you everything that you need to be able to have safety and to just flow, just to surrender. And then in that, like that, I think that's the beauty of it.
There's something in that is making my whole lower body like, oh, it's this piece of like the masculine in full service to the feminine, and dominance from there, right? And not dominance from I'm self-serving. It's like, no, I'm doing this in full service. Like, I actually had someone reach out to me about a year ago. It was this man I used to see or date or fuck or whatever you want to call it. And he sent me this message and I was like, holy shit, this exists. He was like, I don't remember what it was, but he was like, I want to worship you. I want to worship you in whatever way you want to be worshipped. And I was like, I don't feel to be dominant. That's not because he was into that a little bit, like being dominated by women. And I was like, no, I'm very like, I want to surrender. I want to receive. And he said, I will do that for you because I want to worship you. And it was that energy of like, I will step into that role. I will provide. I will create the structure. I will lead. I will do this. I will do that from a service and a like adoration or reverence for the feminine, right? Like, I need you to get to that place of full surrender because you open up and then you take me to this higher place. And then the real man understands that. The real man. I mean, it's not, I don't want to say the real man, but like the embodied masculine man understands that it's you are leading from a place of, it's like service and from your heart, because you understand the power of the fucking feminine. And it's like, women need to understand this. Letting a man lead does not make you weak, doesn't make you not powerful. It doesn't negate your power. It's actually, that's the dynamic. We need to let them lead so we are safe to lean back and open into our power. There's a fucking transmission in there for someone.
Oh yeah.
And the dark masculine, right? Like, so beautiful, because that's so connected to kink. It can be so connected to kink in those spaces and the edges of that. And it's so powerful. So was that, do you think, also something that was just innately in you, or it came out as you were exploring BDSM?
I think it was innately in me, but
Yeah.
I think all men have that potential in some way, because we all hold the dark masculine. We all hold, you know, masculine and feminine in light and in dark. So it's there. I think BDSM just gave me a very clear and concise outlet for it. And it put it in the framework that allowed me to fully step into and embody that.
Yeah.
And then I just obviously amplified and carried that out into other areas of my life.
I love that you said that, because that's literally about to, we're like fucking, it's good. It's like flowing. I was going to ask, outside of sexuality, how does that piece, how does it show up? Like, is it taking control? Is it primal? Like, is it, what does that look like outside of sexuality, the dark masculine to you?
I mean, for me, I like using the 3 Ps. I think like provide, protect, penetrate.
Yeah,
And we can take
beautiful.
that in a number of ways. But it's that. And I talk to a lot of men about this, about provision doesn't just have to mean finances. Like there's a multitude of ways that you can provide, but you need to be providing. You need to be providing and leading. I think protection, like that's the most obvious one to me. And that's, I've always been very physically embodied. And I feel like I have a few things there where I feel like men should be capable of violence. I think they should be able to fight. I think they should be physically strong. I think that a woman should feel protected just by your presence. And if you don't do your emotional work, your physical work, your spiritual work, you're vulnerable, and nobody wants to be around that. Like, vulnerability has a place, but it has a place from strength, choosing to be vulnerable because you're strong enough to do so, not just being a mess. So I feel like it's ultimately, to me, it always boils down to safety. Like, I want to create so much safety and trust in our dynamic. And with the dark masculine, there's always this edge, right? There's always this, like, I feel like this is where either the trickster or like the beauty and the beast kind of archetype comes in. Like women wanting like the darkness that they could tame, that's like that at least they're safe from. So I think there has to be an edge there where it's like, I need to instill so much trust in you that you trust me to protect you from everything, including myself.
Oof, wow. Yeah. Fuck. That is like that. Oh, yeah. I feel that. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely like, oh, wow. Cool. Yeah. Because it's like, you could go over that edge, right? It's for the feminine as well, the dark feminine. You could go over that edge into the complete chaos and destruction, but it's like, I'm going to show you that and open the door to it, but I'm not going to destroy you with it. That destruction, like I mean, the dark feminine and the dark masculine have destruction and chaos as their main thing. So it's like, I'm holding the destruction. I am the destruction, but I trust myself and you trust me to not destroy you. That's fucking beautiful. I love that. Wow. I feel like that should be the wrapping it up summary. Like, I don't think we can get higher than that. That's pretty good. Yeah. Feel that, guys. Like, that's in it. There's energy in that, right? Like, that's like, just gonna let that just drop for a second. Beautiful. So actually, there's one more thing I want to ask you before we wrap it up. If someone, what is any advice to any man listening to this who, like, say they have a partner and their partner's doing all this feminine work and they're expanding past them now and they're like, oh shit, I've got to get it together, or any man who's just looking from a place of being single and whole in himself, like he's getting the call to go through this initiation, other than seeking out a mentor, what is something that you would advise for them, or any advice that you have for them as a mentor yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds so simple what I'm about to say, so I might have to expand, but it's going inwards, right? It's like being in witness state. There's so much of you that you don't see, that you've got to open up even just the thought of like, is there more than what I'm seeing? Do I know myself enough? And we don't, we never know ourselves enough. So it's like, I would say it's always about that. It's always about turning all the direction inward. It's not distraction. It's not pursuit of things external to you. It's like, it's being in the mirror. It's like looking inwards and facing the parts of us that we push down, right? It's that shadow. You can't just layer affirmation on top of the shitty parts. You've got to like go in there and confront them. Beautiful. I think that'll take most people a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And that's what I would say too. That's the first advice I would give anyone on any path of awakening. Look at yourself. Beautiful. Ash, this has been so beautiful, and it's been such a privilege and honor to have you here. If people want to find you, work with you, do your mentorship, anything, explore your content, how can they do that?
I'm probably most active on Instagram, despite my relationship waving with that. So you'll find me at Ash_Parkhouse. And then there'll be links in bio and things like that. That's probably the only place that I'm ever particularly present. Or if anybody comes through Portugal,
awesome.
Come through Portugal. But yeah.
Amazing. So I'll put those details down in the show notes as well, guys. I just like to have you say them in case people are lazy and they don't want to scroll down to the show notes. Thank you, brother. Been such an honor. Thank you personally for how you supported me in my mission and my own embodiment. Definitely impacted me greatly. Guys, check him out. I can vouch for this man. I mean, I wouldn't have him on my podcast if I didn't vouch for him, but amazing. So to everyone listening, guys, if you've enjoyed this, please hit me with a subscribe, hit me with a comment on Apple Podcasts. It really supports us to get these out to people. Share this with a man who needs to hear this, right? Share this. If you're like sitting around complaining, oh my God, there's no men like at my level, which I talked about in a few previous episodes, we can be the change by imparting them with knowledge and wisdom and guiding them in the right way, guys. So please share this with someone who needs to hear it. And until next time, beautiful souls, I love you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cracked Open. Don't forget to hit subscribe and share with a friend if this episode has served you in any way. For more information about the work that I do or to get in touch with me, read the show notes or head to beckmylonas.com. Until next time, beautiful soul.